good to be alive in this land of ours. Good to drive in this land of ours.
Hello, Canada hockey fans in the United States.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Hockey Time Machine. I'm Glenn Dreyfus. The reason we're calling this program Inclusion, it's a nod to our first guest, Kwame Mason. And Kwame is a renowned filmmaker and also renowned dad who's on dad duty tonight. Hi, Kwame.
Hi, look at this guy right here. Look at this. Look at you hear him already? Yes, Hendricks. Here you go. How you doing, Glenn?
You can't tell him quiet on the set, right?
Oh, I will.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to talk about Soul on Ice, but you have said you like the word inclusion better than diversity, and tell me why.
So, to be inclusive means everybody is a part of the ecosystem or whatever it is that you're doing. To be diverse is more just the look. I don't think you can get to diversity until you get to inclusion first. If you skip straight into diversity, then you're almost just checking a box and say, hey, look what we have here. Here's the picture. How does it look to you? But if you truly want to have a great atmosphere and a great group of people around you, you got to get them in the boardroom. You got to get them into the decision-making process. And that means they've got to be included in all those different levels of business, sport, practice, whatever it may be. Because once you do that, then anything else after that will become more diverse.
Well, that's too bad, because I thought we could just go, okay, we're diverse. Okay. Racism, that's settled. Where are we going for lunch?
Yeah, and that's where, a lot of, business heads are at that type of mindset where they say, okay, well, we've got a person of color, we've got a person from the LGBTQ plus committee, we have a woman here, we're good. And it's like, no, it's that you're not even close to being good. Until those people are a part of the decision-making process, then you will have yourself a more diverse and more inclusive environment.
For those who don't know, Kwame is what I like to call the Guy Lafleur of filmmakers.
I like that.
You can use that. And the reason I mention that is not only because he produced an elegant and fast-moving film in Soul on Ice, but also you're not being invited to connect your name with Flower that kind of led you down this road. So tell us that story.
So, when growing up here in Toronto, my first memories of hockey is really the Montreal Canadiens, especially that huge cup run with those greats like Lafleur, Robinson, and Schutt, and Dryden, and something about Guy Lafleur, I was just, not only did he wear number 10, just like my favorite soccer player Pelé, and I always thought that if you were the best on a team, you wore the number 10. So whenever I played, and I played the opposing team, whoever wore number 10, I'm always looking out at how good that person is, because that represented greatness at that time. So Guy Lafleur was the guy that I was so attracted to on the ice for some reason at the tender age of like 6 and 7. Probably not even really understanding why, but something about him was amazing. And, the one thing that kind of takes Guy Lafleur to where I am today with making the film was, when we were kids, and everybody has these stories of going outside with your friends and playing street hockey, and when you're getting the net set up and everybody's divided into teams, somebody's yelling out, I'm going to be Steve Shutt, or I'm going to be Dryden, or everybody picks their names. And one time I just said, I'm going to be Guy Lafleur, and this kid said to me, you can't be Guy Lafleur because he's white. And I don't know if I don't want to say that that kid was trying to be malicious. He was just trying to point out that, you got to be somebody that looks like you. And that's really the first time I was just like, whoa. And I just, for some reason, that memory always stuck to me. And, it made me think about, okay, well, if I can't be Guy Lafleur, then who can I be? And I didn't know. I didn't know Willie O'Ree. I didn't know Tony McKegney. I didn't know Mike Marsden. I didn't know any of these players. So, fast forward to when I got older and decided to make the film, it was just like, that was one of the first things that really popped up into my head, to be able to say, this is a reason why I'm making this film, because I don't want young boys and girls of any race or different nationality not to have a role model, not to be able to, off the top of their head, be able to say, oh, I'm going to be this person. Now, I don't think there should be well, I have to just be a black player and I just have to be a white player. I think you should be any player, but I think for people of color, you got to understand that you have a long-standing history and contribution in this game, and you should be proud of it just like anybody else. So, yeah, Guy Lafleur, I hope one day I get to meet him. Like, man, I'd love to just tell him how much of an influence he was for me.
I rewatched The Soul on Ice this week. It's 6 years ago that you made the film, but it's just as relevant. And unfortunately, it'll be relevant for a long time, as well as being a good history lesson. And I just want to mention to everyone who's watching this, if you call yourself a hockey fan, you owe it to yourself. You need to watch it, because it is both entertaining and heartbreaking and a good history lesson. Here's just a minute from the trailer.
The black men of the community could not play hockey with the white hockey teams in the area. They were just segregated.
We've got some season ticket holders that are complaining about bringing you here.
I had to endure everything. All the name calling, the N-word, I heard it all.
He got death threats. You're playing the white man's game.
You know that you can compete with the best, but you're the wrong color.
For 12 years, we've been coming to hockey, and he's only the second one we've ever seen.
And when we make it, we gon' put our soul on ice. Cause when they doubted us,
I didn't realize that at that time that I had broke barriers and opened doors.
They tried to get rid of us, but they need us.
Our job is to keep building. You got guys like Wayne Simmons and Chris Stewart and PK.
You need me. We double up when our numbers come through the TV. Soul on ice. I'ma put my soul on ice. Nice.
Before we
look at this production value on this show. Like, holy smokes. What am I at? This is incredible.
Well, see if you still feel the same way after it's done. Now, we noticed the hip hop, the rap in the music, and here's a Kwame Mason quote. What hockey is missing is a little funk, a little flavor.
Yeah.
So what would you like to see added to the great game?
Man, I mean, I think that sports has a beauty, a vibe, a poetry, a floetry to it. And I think music plays a huge part in the presentation of a sport. And I would love to see hockey embrace hip-hop culture. Hip-hop culture has always embraced hockey, especially in the 90s, in the form of fashion. And the hockey industry never really took advantage of that. And musically, I always thought that, before I made the film and I would just mess around and edit things on my computer, I always thought that hip-hop blended and felt so good over the visuals of hockey. Just like heavy metal. Heavy metal and hockey is great. Hip hop and hockey, great. And I always said that heavy metal is the other version, is the blood brother of hip hop music. It's the same type of energy. So what I would love to see is the hockey world embrace that. And back in the days, guys were listening to country music and rock and roll in the dressing rooms. You're not hearing that anymore. You're hearing more hip hop, more pop, more electronic music in the dressing rooms. These young kids that's the music that they're listening to. So I feel like the industry needs to catch up, and when they're presenting the sport, present it in that way. I mean, there's a young rapper by the name of Bia, B-I-A. She just did something for the NHL playoffs, and man, it's just crushing right now over the internet. So I think we're getting there, and I just hope we can see more. And I just hope that the hip hop community can now open their eyes and say, oh, wow, there's another avenue that's out there right now. We need to just try to get back into that mix and see what we can bring to elevate the game of hockey in the hip hop culture as well.
Spoken like a former radio DJ, maybe someone who interviewed Jay-Z once upon a time.
That was my first ever interview in '96 in his first album. And that's really interesting because, you sit across somebody and you interview them and you just never know who they're going to be in the future. I remember asking him, I'm like, hey, so, what are you hoping for in the future? And he was just very humble and casual about that. But, when I look back at it today, I'm just like, wow, man, like I was sitting in front of a guy who's going to become the greatest rap entity in the universe. And that was my very first interview.
Well, think of these like bookends. You interview Jay-Z and your career is beginning. Now you're on with me, an indication your career is winding down.
No. We're still going to the peak. We haven't peaked yet. We haven't peaked. This is on the way up.
I mentioned that the Soul on Ice is still every bit as relevant today. So I want to take a deep dive into the film. And here's the overarching thing. This is what I've heard from so many black hockey players. Mm-hmm. The junior player, Jaden Lindo, that was kind of your linchpin of the film. He said this: I'm just a hockey player that happens to be black. And I've heard that from so many of the black hockey players who didn't want to be known as black hockey players. They wanted to be known as hockey players who just happened to be black.
Yeah. I always thought that was a very interesting statement. And the first time I heard that, I was just like, wow, yeah, that makes so much sense, especially for these guys who already have the pressure of being the only one and being a standout on the team. And so when reporters and everybody wants to interview them, one of the first questions is, how does it feel to be a black hockey player? And if you really think about that question, it makes so much that answer is, I just want to be a hockey player, and I am just a hockey player that happens to be black. And here comes the little guy.
Hey, he comes first.
And Bello.
Yeah, and you know what? He's 3.5. He's skating now, and I'm hoping that when he gets older, the scope of the hockey world looks a lot different than what you and I have seen, in a more pleasant way, to the point where he looks back and goes, "What, Dad? That's what you guys had to go through, and that's what you saw, and wow, that sucks to be you guys, So yeah.
Well, we always want things to be better for our kids, and in that sense, I think your film and what's going on will make things better for future generations. But let's go back first and talk about the Colored Hockey League, how innovative it was in terms of the first slap shot, the first goalies going down to the ice, and yet very few hockey fans know about the Colored Hockey League. So educate us.
Yeah, so the Colored Hockey League, so the Maritime was around about 1895 to 1930. That's when you would say they officially were playing. But the young men, the young black men of Nova Scotia, the east part of Canada, were playing hockey a little longer before that. But around that time, the Johnsons were prominent lawyer group in Nova Scotia, and they wanted to get all the young black men to be a part of something, and especially when it came to the church. So what they did was, they wanted to get a bigger congregation, and they said, hey, listen, you guys be a part of our church. We're going to provide you the ability to go and play, and you'll play in front of crowds, and you'll make a little bit of money, and we'll go have some fun. And a lot of the young men, they jumped on board. And so the really interesting thing about the Colored Hockey League of the Maritimes is that they didn't call it the Colored Hockey League of the Maritimes. You just, that was just kind of like the name they used in the newspapers and going forth. The record keeping of that league is very poor. If you go to like the Nova Scotia archives, you will find a lot of articles on the Colored Hockey Leagues of the Maritimes, and there's where you will find the stories of like Eddie Martin and what they call the baseball shot. And what that meant was, Eddie Martin and a lot of the players around that time, they were baseball barnstormers in the summer, and then they played hockey in the winter, and that's what you did to keep in shape. And so he just had the bright idea to swing at the hockey puck the same way as he swung at the baseball, just downwards. And so there was not a name for it. So at that time, they just called it a baseball shot. But we all basically understand what that really is, which is a slap shot. And around that time, the Colored Hockey League, when they played these exhibition games and little games against like white teams, it's more of an entertainment, and one of the things that they found which was entertaining was having the goaltender go all over the ice, whereas in the white leagues it was more structured, and they wanted the goalies stay standing still and stuff like that. So the goaltenders in the Colored Hockey League of the Maritimes, they went down on the ice, and we know that as the butterfly style of goaltending. Okay, well, we'll get your mom to get you. He wants Dizzy. Dizzy is a toy from a TV show called Super Wings. All you parents out there, you are Supercharge. Excuse me, I've been corrected.
Well, if you need to go get him some, then
we're fine.
I thought Dizzy was Dizzy Gillespie.
I was thinking that too when they first had that on the show, but no. It's just a girl helicopter.
All right. Well,
but I'm sorry. I hope that answered your question about the Colored Hockey League of the Maritimes. Very innovative, and I hope one day there will be an investment in going to Nova Scotia and really finding out a lot of the history. I heard that they had a cup, like a Stanley Cup, and apparently it's still out there somewhere. I heard stories of a family had the cup in their living room on their kitchen table, and it's got like jelly beans in there. And I said, "What? How is that even possible?" Like somebody needs, I've gone there. I've seen old gloves, old hockey sticks, like in boxes in Nova Scotia. And I'm like, this should not be this. It shouldn't be like this. Like we've got to figure out some way to really dig deep into that history and find out a lot more about it.
Your film pointed out that the Colored Hockey League outdrew the white leagues, and yet racism destroyed it.
Yeah, because around that time, I mean, it's so interesting. Around those times, it was just seeing a group of black men play this game. I think a lot of the white fan base in hockey around that time were just like, whoa, I want to go and see these guys. They're so fast and they're doing all these things. And so the white teams, they're like, well, listen, we'll play against you. we'll split the gate, and because they knew they were getting like 2,000 to 3,000 people out there watching the game. So that's a good payday. But when it came to the colored hockey, like the players or the teams playing against the white teams for challenging them for their highest prize, it wasn't happening. And as far as the destruction of the league, it was really about territory, and just the classic, we want to put a railroad right through where you all live. And the black community was like, no, you're not displacing us. And so the fight commences. And, when you really want to take away something from, or if you really want to just conquer something, you just take away something. And so no more, the influence that they had in the newspapers was gone, because that was, remember, there's no television, there's no internet, there's no tweeting. So how do you know that the game is happening? How do you even know that you're going to challenge a team? How are you even going to challenge a team? It was done through the newspapers. So they would cut that down, and then they would cut down ice time, and they would give them the worst ice time possible. So by time that these guys were going to play, the ice is all chippy. It's like puddled up. So, it just got to a point where it was just very hard for them to put on a good game, good production, and just kind of weighed down, and it's sad, because I always tell people that hockey had an opportunity to change race relations if they took it upon themselves, especially when the NHL was around. Because remember, the Colored Hockey League went on till about 1930, so the NHL was already happening. Yes, it was 16, but it was happening around that time. If one of those teams had the guts to put on one of these great hockey players on their team, they would have changed history. I promise you that the history would have been so much different, because a young black kid on one of the original 6 teams right at the beginning would have been that role model for the other black kids to want to play. And then you would have seen such an influx, but it's just one of those things, and it's too bad. But we can't dwell on the past. All we can do is learn from the past and know where we're going in the future.
What you just said leads into another prominent part of the film. What should the legacy of Herb Carnegie be?
Wow. Well, at the very least, where we are at right now, I feel like we have to put the effort, as we did for Willie O'Ree, to get Herb into the Hockey Hall of Fame as a builder, because there is not an older black hockey player. Let's just look at the players from Willie O'Ree around that era. I mean, I know he's like 86, I believe, right now. So let's look at those black players around that time. Every single one of them will say that Herb Carnegie was the guy. Any true, honest hockey historian, when they look at the body of work from Herb Carnegie, they'll say that was the guy. Not just a black player, but a player in general. I mean, Jean Beliveau is one of the greatest hockey players to ever play in the National Hockey League. Herb Carnegie was his mentor. That's got to say something. The Mahablis brothers, they used to go and watch Herb, Ozzie, and Manny play, and would say to themselves, oh man, these are the type of guys we're going to have to play against in the NHL. And only if it wasn't for the color of his skin, he would have been in the league. So as far as his legacy goes, I think we have to look at him as one of the best hockey players to play during his time, even though he didn't play in the NHL, as well as his philanthropy and what he did for the game in the future. You got to remember, there was no, at some point in our lives, there were no hockey schools. Everybody knows of a hockey school. Everybody can go on and find a hockey school. At some point, there was no hockey school. This man had the idea to say, you know what if I get all these kids together, teach them how to play hockey, and talk to them about being good human beings off the ice. This is the very first hockey school. Future Aces is the very first hockey school in North America. I mean, that alone should be praised as groundbreaking. So we have to do as a hockey community, I believe if we all believe in history and preserving the history of the game, we have to do a better job of acknowledging what Herb Carnegie meant to the game of hockey. And we have to pay that respect. And I think all we do is button it with the Hockey Hall of Fame. He's got everything else. Order of Canada, Jubilee. He's got all those. I think it's like 6 or 7 halls of fame, sports halls of fame he's already in, and just not the Hockey Hall of Fame. And that's only because we don't have anybody speaking up for him. And so, I'm at that point where I'm going to have to just, say, okay, just like I put it on my back to be able to tell the story of Black athletes in the game of hockey, I think I'm going to have to put it on my back and talk about Herb Carnegie. So,
by the way, what's this little guy's name?
His name is Hendrix, after the greatest guitar player ever to walk this planet Earth, Jimi Hendrix.
From my town, from Seattle.
Okay, that's right. Mr. Seattle. When I was in Seattle visiting the Kraken, I went to his where they had him at rest.
Yeah.
His sister was supposed to be at a Kraken function, and I wasn't going to go. It's a really interesting story. I wasn't going to go because the whole COVID thing was people were starting to really talk about it. And one of the places they were talking about was Seattle. They were like, oh, Seattle's starting to outbreak. And I was like, I don't know, man. I think I'm going to stay home. And they were just like, you got to come. The Kraken really wants you to come there and speak. And I was like, oh, I don't know. And then they got me by showing me that list. And I was like, is that Jimi Hendrix? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, Jimmy's sister? She's on the board. She's going to be there. And they're like, yeah. I was like, I'll be there. I'll be there. And she didn't even end up being there. She had some other prior engagement. But you tell me anything about Jimi Hendrix, you can get me to go almost anywhere.
Good. Then you'll come back.
Oh, I'll be there I'm going to be there opening night. Don't worry, I'll be there. Like when I was in Seattle, I was so impressed with the Kraken and their organization and how they're putting everything together. And they are going to be the benchmark for hockey organizations in the future. Just how their green initiative, their diversity and inclusion initiative, just the work that they're doing. Oh my God, I think that's the future of hockey. And God forbid if they get a first-year run like anything close to what Vegas did, it'll be definitely, as Roger Sportsnet says, it's on.
Everett Fitzhugh, first Black NHL play-by-play broadcaster.
Good dude, very nice guy. He's that package. A great community guy, great hockey story, loves the game, has so much passion, has so much energy that he's going to be an instant star, and he's going to be a legend in the Kraken. He'll be a legend. He's going to be legendary status in Seattle when it's all said and done.
In your film, we move ahead to the modern day, and one of your buddies, George Laraque, he says this in the film. He heard the N-word shouted at him so often, he would have thought, or we all would have thought, that was his own name. And he said that included his own teammates and coaches. And what struck me about that is because all of the Black players have faced that vile hatred, but a lot of the players don't say that it came from even inside their own organization. Is it more prevalent even with teammates and coaches, or was George just especially unlucky?
Yeah, I think George was especially unlucky playing out of Montreal, Quebec. That was that's a pretty intense area, especially when he was playing. And I just think he was most unfortunate for his time. And, you know, as unfortunate as that may have been, he gets the most credit out of everybody, in my opinion, because from a very young age, he recognized the barriers that he was facing, and he recognized that he had a duty to persevere through all adversity. And his adversity, the biggest adversity he got was from his parents. You know, at 8 years old, his parents, just a couple years into watching him play the game of hockey, had to endure what they heard in the stands and said to a young George, let's do something else. Like, you know, this is too much. And he just battled back and said, I want to play. Well, George, if you want to play, we're not going to be in the stands, and we can't handle doing this. And, you know, George told them something that is probably one of the greatest things that a child could tell their parents, which is a lesson, and said, if I quit, they win. And, you know, that strength at that young age almost was, in my opinion, that thing that the universe said, you will make it into the National Hockey League and you will prove them wrong. And you will be one of the most beloved hockey tough men in the city of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And I think that outweighs all the negativity, because you know, you might want to call him the N-word on the ice, but you're probably going to get a black eye. So, you know, that's, I think a lot of players understood that was probably not the best thing to do. So that subsided. As far as the crowds, it's just like the internet. You know, you've got something to hide behind, and there's always going to be these tough guys behind the glass and behind the computer. So there's really not much you can do with it. That's never going to go away. But what young minority players have to understand is they have to find strength in their family, in their teammates, in their friends, their loved ones, and that's what's going to allow them to overcome any type of name calling. As long as they don't get it from their teammates and their coaches or their organizations, then, you know, you could deal with the other thing, other stuff. But, you know, it still happens. I mean, I've been mentoring a young kid out of New York who was 2 years ago was being verbally abused by his teammates, to the point where, you know, they talked to their team, the organization about that, and they thought it was something that they could nip in the bud, but they didn't take the real steps to shut it down, to the point where they went to a tournament overseas, and the kid ended up getting jumped by two of his teammates. And so his teammates. So once they got back, so-called teammates, and no suspension, no nothing. So, you know, once they got back, and it was like a boarding school kind of thing. So the mother just went, picked him up, and just said, that's it. And that's the sad thing about the ignorance of bigotry or racism in the game of hockey. You're just keeping great athletes away from a great game. And I just don't understand how that, you know, how does that make, you know, how does that make any sense? But, you know, racism has never made sense, right? So
do you think some black athletes, and it's completely understandable if they do you think sometimes in their public comments they minimize racism because they're just so exhausted and so it's so painful to talk about?
Yeah. Oh, 100% they downplay it. I think they downplay it for a couple of reasons. One being the exhaustion of always having to talk about it over and over and over again. And the other is there was a time that, you know, as a black athlete, regardless of what level, NHL or anything, you talk about stuff, you were labeled as not like a troublemaker, but oh God,
you were the problem.
Right. Almost like you're the problem. They were made to feel like they were the problem, like they were a distraction to the team, where it's just like they just wanted to come and play. It's not their fault that an opposing player uses that word. It's not their fault that an opposing player, or an opposing team is picking straws to say who's going to fight the black guy. I mean, like some of the stories that I've heard from the older players like Val James and Mike Marzin are some of the most heartbreaking things you ever hear, to the point where they'll say Kwame, like some of these guys that I had to go up against are working right now. You know them as household names.
Yeah.
And here I am. I don't have that opportunity. And that's that part that really, oh man, that hurts the most, man. That hurts the most, talking to those guys, to know what they went through. And, I commend them all the time, because there are so many young black players right now that have the opportunity to do what they love. And if it wasn't for these guys, and that's why I made the film, because when I first started thinking about making the film, it was really because I learned about the Colored Hockey League. And I thought, if I am just learning about this Colored Hockey League, how many people don't know about that? And then another thing that made me really want to make this film was because around 2011, 2010, even a little bit earlier than that, you saw PK Subban, Wayne Simmons, Evander King, all these younger guys that were coming up, they were playing some really pivotal roles, and they were young. And especially when PK broke into the NHL, the focus started to look at him. And I thought, as great as that is, we have to have some context of the guys who came before him that never had the opportunity that he is having. And so I wanted to make sure people knew about Mike Marzin, Val James, Tony McKegney. Tony McKegney is our very first superstar. If you talk to anybody that's playing in a forward role at high speed and very productive, the 6 degrees of separation to Tony McKegney is so cool, because most of these young guys will be like, oh, well, Jerome McGinley. I mean, I saw Jerome McGinley and I want to play the game and I want to be dominant like Jerome McGinley. But if you ask Jerome McGinley, who's the guy for you? He's going to tell you Tony McKegney.
Yeah.
So how are we not celebrating that as well? Yeah. And so, I mean, we're just in a time where we have to pay respect to those who have come before us and have paved the way. And, maybe it wasn't as easy for them, but it's easier for these kids now. But, that's my job I got to make sure people recognize and know.
The flip side of the black athletes not always wanting to talk about how painful it was is I've heard a number of white hockey players as well as coaches and executives say, I had no idea. They were oblivious. Now, were they really oblivious? Was it a conscious ignorance of not wanting to see this? How could they not have seen it?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really answer that to the extent of know what's in somebody's mind, but I think I would say it like this. I think they knew it was happening, but they didn't understand how it would affect somebody. Because how are you going to know how race or I just think those guys would think, okay, well, he called him a name, but I've been called a name before too. They don't understand the historical context behind that. To play in the NHL at that level, you're engulfed in the game of hockey from when you're 4 years old, and everything is tunnel vision for you. It's eat, sleep, drink hockey. Outside world, I mean, it takes a special person to follow other things that are happening, especially other races. So I think for those guys, they honestly were oblivious to how it would affect a person of color because they never really dealt with a person of color. You know, most of those guys that the old school guys that played in the National Hockey League probably never came across any other black player, but maybe that one black player that they played with on their team. Or, you know, when would they really ever have a connection with another person of color? And that's the shame. That's the shame, because when you grow up and, you know, and you're just only around one race of person, you only can think or you can only look at other people from what you see on television, and you know how bad that can be. So,
well, where I come down on this, and since I am white, straight, and male, it is all about me, is that ignorance is no excuse. It's no excuse in the law. It should be no excuse for racism, whether you are the person being racist or whether you see racism and don't call it out.
I agree. I agree with you. I agree with you on that. And I think that, you know, that's why, you know, where we are right now is kind of almost like a reckoning of understanding. And, you know, that's why, you know, we have to be able to have these open conversations and not be afraid to say, you know, how complacent some of us have been in the ignorance and the lack of knowledge or the lack of opportunity for people of color. You know, we can rectify this. We can rectify this easily by saying we'll never let that happen again. You know, that's just how I see the best way of going about it, and you know, opening up opportunities and avenues for, you know, marginalized people, be it race, be it gender, be it sexuality, whatever it may be. You just have to open it up, and, you know, once we do that, we'll get a better product.
A couple of last questions in the few moments we have left. One is a comment from Elliot Friedman of Hockey Night in Canada and Sportsnet, who I think is often brilliant. And as a Jewish man, he has known his share of bigotry himself. In your film, he said something which would have raised my eyebrows if I had eyebrows. He said, I hope we see a day when there are more white Canadians playing in the NBA and more black Canadians playing in the NHL. Did you want to say to Elliot, but the only obstacle for white Canadians is they have to be good enough?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I thought that was a very interesting comment that he made, and I know what he was trying to say, but I mean, the basketball analogy, I'm like, you can't compare that. Basketball, as much as we go say that basketball, especially the NBA, is predominantly black, there's a very still good mix in there, way more than there is in the NHL. And I think his hope is, I think his heart is in the right place. I just think that was a little off, but I thought it was very, very interesting. That's why I kept it in the film, because, you know, there are a lot of white guys from Canada that are playing in the NBA. They're pretty good too. So,
well, if you wanted to know whether anyone noticed, well,
yeah,
we did.
Yeah.
You also included Don Cherry in the film, and I know you've spoken positively about Don.
Yeah.
Just from his history of comments, I could build a case that he's maybe not the biggest fan of inclusion or diversity. So why did Don Cherry get a voice?
Okay, so when I really rediscovered my love of hockey, two people really put me there. One was Jerome McGillna, when I watched my first NHL game in Calgary and saw him play, and I was like, oh my God, this guy is so great. And the other was Don Cherry, watching him again on Hockey Night in Canada. I just loved his analysis. I always said about Don, I'm like, yo, I really love what he says about hockey. The other stuff, it's just like, it's cringeworthy. He got a voice because in my opinion, he would be a guy that, and at that time when I was putting the film together, he had his credibility, and I always thought that his perspective would be very interesting. He's only in 2 clips, but I think what he said about Herb Carnegie was great, and I think what he said about PK Subban was great. If you look at, if I gave you some of the other footage, you might be like, and that's why I never made it into the film. But people.
Well, why were you protecting him then?
Right. Okay. So that's a very good question, because I was on another podcast and I got into an argument with a guy, and we were talking about bigotry and racism and this and that and that. And I said to him, I said, Don, in my opinion, he's like an Archie Bunker, for those who remember who Archie Bunker is. And I think the biggest problem for Don, and I put it on CBC a lot, because they never surrounded him with a diverse group of people. I feel that if Don was surrounded by a diverse group of people in many years, he would have a different perspective. But all he was around with is hockey, it's white people. So his mindset has always stuck in this one tunnel vision space. And I always felt bad, because in my times that I've always talked to Don was always respectful and nice. He didn't have to. I always tell people, I'm like, if he's such a racist, why would he do an interview with a black director, first-time director, no credits, and talk about black hockey players? Like, why would he want to do that? I just couldn't see a racist wanting to do something like that. Now, I think he's got a lot of very bigoted viewpoints. I will never excuse those. But I just feel that years ago, maybe 20 years ago, somebody could have sat him down and talked to him. But because the machine was making so much money off of him and what he was saying, and couldn't care less about minority people, they allowed him to keep doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it until the very point when our society has changed, and now they're like, oh, Don, you can't say that. Well, where were you 10 years ago when Don was saying that? You didn't have a problem then, but you got a problem now? So as much as I will hold Don accountable for what he said and the things that he said, I also got to talk about everybody else that was eating lunch off of him and his antics, because they didn't care about minorities then. Why are you caring about us now? You're caring about us now because you know that your bottom line is being effective. And I think that's just as bad as what Don Cherry said. So that's why I kind of defended him.
Well said. Where I come down on this, because again, it is about me, is and I'm old enough to remember Archie Bunker, not in reruns, but when it was on originally.
Live.
Is that it's okay to laugh at Archie Bunker, but we shouldn't be laughing with Archie Bunker.
You're right.
Okay.
You're right.
All right. I'm not trying to get on your case.
No, that's totally fine. I tell you, one day I want to sit down one-on-one with Don Cherry and interview him and really bring it to him and just get it, and just kind of go and give him the tough questions. I think a lot of people were just too intimidated by Don Cherry to actually sit down and actually put his feet to the fire and say to him, do you not understand why that is wrong and why you should not say that? And that's, to me, that's the one thing that I think nobody's ever done. If you look at all of Don Cherry's interviews, everything is very candy coated and safe. Listen, even to when I was interviewing Don Cherry, when we came to interview him, I don't think anybody, he's like a diva. He's totally a diva. He told us where to put our cameras, where to set up our lights, and how to angle certain things. I couldn't believe it. But I was like, okay, well, I guess that's just how Don Cherry is. And that is the first inclination of me learning that, oh, nobody's ever told this man no. Nobody's ever objected to this guy. Everybody's just been afraid of him because he's this icon of a person. But then you get to his point where he says that one thing, and then they're saying, no, our bottom line outweighs what he's bringing in, so he's out of here.
Yeah, well, you know the old line about the only color you see is green.
That's it.
I want to close with something that made me feel really good, and I bet it made you feel good too. In the film, there is this question that gets asked. How close are we to seeing an all-black line playing consistently in the NHL? Well, the answer is we still haven't seen it consistently.
Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't leave out that word.
Good.
What happened earlier this month?
Wow, we've got to see an all-black line in Tampa Bay, Florida, which was really, really cool to see. It just, and I didn't even think about it, and I thought how Tampa did it was great. They just put it out there, and I mean, I think people knew the day of, but they didn't make it into this huge announcement. Just let it be what it be, and I'm sure that might have been a little influence from the Ontario Reign, the affiliate of the LA Kings, when they had the three black players, Devontae Smith-Pelé and Quinton Byfield and Nikhil Thomas playing together. But I thought that was really special, and I think in the film, I say that the question for me was consistently. I made sure I said consistently because I knew that there'll be a day where they could put it together like they did with Tampa Bay, and it's there. But how is this going to be like the perfection line? Are we going to get one of those? Are we going to get it consistently? That's what I'm more focused on. But I really did like the fact that they did it, and it was really cool. And those guys got that opportunity to be a part of something like that. That's in history. That will be in the history books. I'm sure some of their equipment will be in the Hall of Fame. So now the next step is, okay, when do we see three black players that are gelling to the point that, boom, they're on a line together consistently in the NHL? And I think, was it Grant Fuhr said 5 or 6 years, I believe. I think he was the closest as far as where we are today.
The greatest day is going to be when there is an all-black line in the NHL and nobody gives a damn because it's so commonplace that it isn't even worth mentioning. I hope we get to that day.
Yeah, Braden Hopies had said that to me, a couple of years ago in Washington. He's like, I hope we can get to a place where all these things aren't needed. And I think that's a great way of looking at it. And until that day happens, we will keep celebrating. I remember, this is around a couple of months ago, and when I don't know if you remember, like the industry of hockey, it was just getting intense. I think the Brett Peters thing was happening, and it just got really tense out there. And it made me fall back a little bit because I didn't sign up for all that. I didn't sign up for all the hatred and the yelling and the every side and who's right and who's wrong and the NHL is this and we're doing that and we need, I wasn't, that wasn't what I was doing this whole thing for. And it got me to a place to say, okay, well, what's your purpose and what's going to be your role? And the thing for me was, and the statement that I have now that I use consistently is normalizing black faces and voices in the game of hockey. And that can be expanded to normalizing minority faces and voices in the game of hockey. Because when we get to that point, then it's just like, okay, yeah, there's 3 black guys on the line. Whatever. They lit it up tonight, or they need to split up that line. They're not good. We just like you said, we want to get to that point where it's not a big deal. But until that day, man, I'll always, celebrate that and shine a light on that's happening, because what those things do is it motivates, it energizes the young minority boys and girls out there that are watching it. And, when they get to playing ball hockey or they're on the ice with their friends who look like them, they can say, man, Imagine one day we can do that. And there was a time when they would never even thought about it. Like, I mean, 10 years ago, people were never thinking about, 5 years ago, people were never thinking about an all-black line. I was thinking about it. But I guarantee you the masses of people were not thinking about an all-black line, especially playing in the NHL. But that was the whole purpose of doing that film. I'm like one of those magicians, man. I had a vision. I knew something. I knew this, where we are today. I knew this was going to happen. I just knew it. It's actually one of the weirdest things that happened to me in my life, as far as trusting your instincts and being so in tune with the universe. Like, I brag about that all the time. I say, you guys are thinking about that now? Ask Paul. I was thinking about this, God, so many years ago, and I'm just glad that everybody's starting to catch up.
A lot of us are glad too, Kwame. I could easily spend another hour with you, but I thank you so much for your time. Please thank Hendrix for allowing us to share you. Now, how much do you charge an hour for babysitting?
You know what? I don't trust anybody yet.
Oh, no, I mean for us to bring our kids to you.
Oh, well, hey, listen, I'm good to go, man. I'll give you a little $10 an hour. Back in the days, the old school $10 an hour. Wasn't that the going rate back in the 80s?
Where can we find your podcast?
So anywhere you get podcasts, like Apple, iTunes, wherever you get podcasts, just go So On Ice the podcast. Every Wednesday, we just had Julie Chu on the show. She's amazing. We had Gary Bettman on the show. There's a lot of back issues. If you haven't listened to it, you can find some really, really cool guests that we have on there. We're climbing along, but it's just fun to be able to talk hockey and have a lot of cool guests on the show.
Well, we just had a cool guest on our show, Kwame Mason.
Sir.
Thanks so much. Very much appreciated.
Thank you, Glenn. It's always a pleasure. The production value of this show is incredible. I just want you guys to know.
We'll hope to talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
Yes, sir. Take care.
That is Kwame Mason. And now an interview I'm equally proud that we're able to get with the first African-American NHL player, Val James. Here's that conversation from earlier today. The Val James story is one of courage and perseverance, and not just in a racial discrimination sense. Val, how old were you when your family first had electricity and running water?
Let me see. That would have been in the 60s. We were living on a farm, and back then farmhouses didn't all have electricity. So I was probably somewhere around 7 or 8 when we actually got it. So it was up to that point. We would, we had lanterns and stuff like that. We were living like the colonials. So it was. We had one stove. It was a one-room house. And the beds were placed around the outside of everything, so they light the stove, and that would keep us warm at night. So it was kind of challenging for a while, but if you don't know any difference until you actually get electricity, you really don't miss it, right?
I bet you don't take things for granted, though.
Never. It's like I'm thankful for everything that I have and everything that I get, and I am very thankful to be living the way that I am, because I look at there's so many people out there that don't have anything, that really don't have the opportunities that you, I, Laura, or Paul would have.
Well, to be fair, I've gone through my share of hardships too. Last week, they were out of my favorite flavor of ice cream at the supermarket.
Okay, that must have really hurt you.
I'm going to try to follow the Val James example of being thankful for what I do have. You didn't put on your first ice skates till you were a teenager, and your skating buddy was named Timber. Tell me about Timber.
Timber was our Doberman, and he was the family dog, but he'd been taken to the rink so that he kind of run around and watch things. At that point in time, we were running flea markets, so everything that we had there were lot of merchandises from a lot of people. So it had to be watched just in case someone had decided to break in. But at that time, before all that was happening, this was the hockey season. And I was learning to skate. I had a wooden chair, and I had Timber, who would come in the rink. And we had, the way the rink was set up, there was one big spotlight that lit the center ice area, and it only went to just about to the blue lines. So once you got past the blue lines, there wasn't much out there except dark. So he got used to playing hide and seek with us, because we play that with him in the rink, and he got pretty good at it. So he'd hide out in the dark areas, and as soon as I started pushing the chair around, he'd come out and submarine me. And I'd go down because I couldn't stand up. And the only thing that was holding me up was the chair. But he was really a really good dog, really good friend, very smart. He knew his job. And the thing was that he enjoyed having a good time too, just as much as I did.
Now, you were drafted by the Red Wings, but Timber was never drafted, right?
No, he missed the cut.
I'm going to go over a list that I'm going to apologize in advance for to you, Val, but I don't think our audience should be too discomforted, because they only have to listen to this list. You had to live it. I'm talking about things you faced: bananas on the ice,
right?
Fans dressed in Klan-style hoods, a teenager holding a watermelon, a monkey doll, and a noose. Tell me, how did you not just decide that this experiment in humanity had been a big failure and just walk away?
Well, I was determined to get to the National Hockey League, and I considered what everyone was doing was just something to throw me off my game. Now, I can understand that, but they went a little bit far sometimes with the racial slurs and that. But you got to look at it like, if I was playing for the team, I think they would have loved me even more and probably treated me with a lot more respect. Now, a lot of those incidents took place my first couple of years in the league, and we're talking American Hockey League, Eastern Hockey League, National League a little bit. But the National League had it under control a bit, but you can't really control people as much as you would like. With today's standards and the new rules that they've implemented for the rinks, it seems to be working out all right. So people don't get away with the kind of things that they did back in the day. Now, it was always, I guess we had a running joke with the guys on the team. What's it going to be tonight? Is it going to be bananas? Is it going to be the stuffed monkey? What's it going to be? Squids, maybe fish or something thrown on the ice? We've even had nuts and bolts thrown at us. So it's like we've had the whole bag of tricks actually.
And what's worse, if anything could be worse, is that you started facing that discrimination. You weren't even an adult. You were 13 at a tournament.
Yes, that was, I guess, my first eye-opening experience to super racism, I'll call it. Where I'm from Long Island, New York. Originally, I was born in Florida, but I was raised on Long Island, and we had a pretty mixed bag of kids that we hung around with. We had German kids, we had Irish kids, we had Italian kids, black kids, me, and so we had a pretty diversified group at that point in time, and we all got along, and there was really no name calling, and we respected each other. And I guess that's the bottom line of in anything. You have to respect people, otherwise it all goes crazy.
And the other component of it, besides how vile it was how frequent it was. You have said that you heard it every 3 seconds for 40 games a year for 10 years.
Right.
I can't imagine that.
No, you know what? It was pretty disheartening at first, but then you kind of grow a thick skin because you have to. Now, if I had to go and try and beat up everybody in the stands, well, first off, you got to look at it like this. They're paying your salary or the salary of the team that you're playing against. And to display that kind of violence as a professional player against the fans is a no-no. You just don't do that.
You wrote a very important book in 2015 called Black Ice, and I want to read something you wrote. I set out to be a hockey player, not a black hockey player. However, the two concepts quickly became intertwined and not by choice. From early on, there were some people who were determined to prove that being black and being a hockey player were mutually exclusive. Expand on that, if you would.
Well, it's true. When I started out, I wasn't thinking of becoming the first black player to play in the NHL. It just played out that way. But there were a lot of people that were giving me a lot of support in order to get to that point. But then again, there were people on the other side of the coin that didn't want me to get to that point. And they would say things to me like, aren't you supposed to be playing football or basketball or maybe even soccer, something like that? You shouldn't be out here on the ice. Don't you guys have weak ankles? Okay, so I'm like, no. And the thing is that anyone that goes on the ice has weak ankles until they strengthen them. So that was one of those things that was just off the cuff, I guess you could say.
And you met your wife, Ina, and it wasn't until long after you were married, if I understand right.
Yes, you do.
That she actually learned about some of the atrocities you faced by reading them in the book.
That's correct. Like John Gallagher, who was the co-author with me, who's a federal judge down in Pennsylvania, and he's a really good friend at this point. And the thing is that I didn't feel that I should say that stuff to her or even let her know. It would just be something that would be disruptive to my relationship, I thought. But I was kind of foolish and I should have told her. She was pretty broken up when she read the first part of the book. Actually, she cried every half hour. Actually, it was one of those things where it was very emotional for her, and it's probably emotional for a lot of people that read it. I know that a lot of people that have proofread the book, they can't believe it, and that does bring tears to their eyes. And sometimes they just ask how could things like that be happening in the 1980s? And it's like, you know what, that kind of thing's been happening for a long time, not just the 1980s. And it may have tapered off a bit, but it's still happening now. And there's a lot of people out there that can attest to that, I'm pretty sure. Now, with all the happenings and everything that's gone on in the last few years in the black community, there are a lot of people out there that are trying to level the playing field more or less. But it works both ways. If someone's leveling the playing field for you, you have to recognize that and react accordingly. Now, when they first started doing that, the Black Lives Matter thing, when all those people were getting hurt, there were agents of violence that were intermingling with the crowd and causing trouble. So I thought at the time that the best thing to do would be to get the people off the street early, go out for your rallies, but get off the street early. And in that way, anybody that was left out there causing trouble would be the troublemakers, and they would be the ones that would get caught, and the organization wouldn't have to take any kind of flack over it.
Before we move on to other aspects of your career, because you certainly weren't defined just by the color of your skin.
No.
But one thing I've learned is, in having discussions on race, is that we as white people need to do more listening and let people of color do more talking. So is there something that you, with the platform that you have to the people you're speaking to now, that you want to tell them either about the past or about the present or about the future?
Well, I think that we should learn from the past, and there's a lot of things that just got mixed up in the whole bundle. Now, I think that if people understand each other's race a little better, that would smooth things out. Now, the black population and the black race has gone through a lot of changes over the last 100 years. But if you look at things and go back a little further, you'd look at when the Irish came over, when the Italians came over, when the Orientals came over, they were all subjected to the same type of thing. Now, I look at it like this: that since these races have already been through this, there should be no reason why they would want to put another race through that. And in my mind, I can't do that to anybody, whether they're of color or of another race, or even someone who's a little bit overweight or a little bit slow in learning. You know, these things, you have the same feeling when people call you names that you would if someone called you a racial name. So we should be a little more sensitive or a little more caring of other people's feelings before we actually start saying things or find out what's wrong with somebody if they're acting kind of weird. Okay, so there's a lot of things that we can do as a race, and I'm talking as the human race. I'm not just concentrating on one race. I'd like to see us come together as the human race and get all these things done that we can get done.
Do you find that, especially after having written the book, that a lot of white people, did they comment to you, gee, I had no idea?
Yes, that was the running theme pretty much. A lot of people said they had no idea it was happening like that. And I've had a lot of people apologize to me for the white race. And I'm thinking, well, thank you for apologizing for the white race. But you know what? It's you have to think of the people that are saying it. And I in my mind, I could be wrong. I think that it's been done like because they were ignorant to what some of these words mean, or what they could do to somebody's psyche. Now, I look at it that there's a lot of these kids out here that are just wet behind the ears, and they're using these words and that, and most of them don't even know what they mean or what kind of history are behind them. Now, if you take the N word, you know, it was thrown around what 1860s, 1820s, and it meant a whole. It went back a lot further than that. But the point I'm getting at is there was a lot of people sacrificing their lives, arms and feet, and even, you know, their families were split up over it. So there's a lot of history behind that, and if people could only understand that people lost their lives because of this word, and when they were losing their lives, they were getting called this word. So it cuts pretty deep. So it was probably the first thing that some of these people heard when they became of age, where they were coherent, and then the last thing they heard when they were dying. So it's a pretty loaded word.
As we move on now, I want to thank you very much for those thoughts, very eloquently stated, and I appreciate you taking the time to express what has to be a painful topic for you. So before we go on, I just want to thank you for sharing everything you've shared with us so far.
Well, the thing is that if you don't share and try and help people to understand a race, then they will never understand, and it will keep going. Now, at this point in time, there's other races that are being persecuted. You know, like, you know, if we look at when COVID came out, now all of a sudden everyone that was Asian was having troubles. Also, if you look at when 9/11 happened, okay, now all the Middle Eastern people were subjected to all kinds of hate. So we have to reset ourselves and make sure that we are talking to the right people. And when I say the right people, the people that are causing trouble are the ones that you want to talk to, but you never want to call them names, right? But we have to be aware that it seems that only the bad things in each race is broadcasted or put on a stage, when there are so many good things that each race has done that should be up there as well. Now, that would probably even things out and have people not thinking, well, you know, that race and all these guys, and they're all terrible, they're robbers, they do drugs, and, you know, sell drugs and all this kind of stuff. So you gotta draw the line somewhere.
Let's talk about a happy day now, November 1st, 1981. What is the significance of that date?
Well, that was the day that I became the first African-American to play NHL hockey. Actually, I didn't even think about it at the time. It was brought to my attention by some of the players and some of the friends that I had that were regular paying fans, right? And friends of mine, obviously. So it was a very significant day for me, and hopefully a significant day for our race as black hockey players in that. And I have the shirt on that they did in Buffalo for that, to commemorate that day, but I can't really get a good shot of it. So hang on, I'm gonna stand up a little bit. Maybe you can see it.
Okay.
Okay. See that? Oops, went the wrong way. 1981.
Yes.
26. First African American to play in the NHL was a Buffalo Sabre. Okay, so it was a gentleman. The artist that did this was Adris. I always mess up his last name. But he was he's from Buffalo, and they did this shirt, and they made quite a few of them. They sold quite a few of them so far, and it's just been great. I'm very appreciative of the fact that they honored me this way. Like, as you notice, anyone that knows who I am or knows what happened will understand the shirt. Or anyone on the street can ask somebody and they can tell them who did what. So I'm pretty happy about it. And that day, like I said, it was incredible. And 50 years later, when you think about it, it's you think, man, I went through a lot of stuff to get to there. And I've got 40 years. I've only got one thing to say. I have to thank all the people who were white that helped me to get to where I've gotten in the sport. And because we didn't really have any black fans or anyone in the black population that was interested in the game of hockey, really. So I just got to send out a real heartfelt thanks to all those people, friends, and even strangers, because as I said before in a couple other interviews, at that point in time, a lot of people could have lost all their livelihood helping someone of my color, but they stepped up to the plate and they swung the bat. So I'm very proud of them, and they should be proud of themselves, because that's a very courageous thing to do, the way the society was structured at that time. Society is coming around now, but it still has that edge on it.
Gotcha. There's a wonderful story at the time that said you phoned home when you found out you were being called up, and when your mom said she was proud of you, you replied, "It's not for me, Mama. It's for all of us." What did you mean by that?
Well, I meant because everyone made sacrifices for me to play the game of hockey. Back then, we didn't really have a whole lot of money, so we had to make a few sacrifices for me to get equipment, for me to get ice time and that. And everybody hung together pretty good on it. Like, I know that I used to do work in the summer with my dad at the rink, so in order to make it right, I would just tell my dad, look, you know what? Just give me $60 or $70 to get through the week. The rest of my check, take it and use it with the family. Because I realized how much they had actually sacrificed for me to do what I was doing.
No one should get the impression, as I said earlier, that ethnicity is all that defines you. You played on 3 different championship teams. So I want to go through that a little bit. First one was in Quebec. What do you remember about that?
Oh man, that was an experience. Okay. Now, first off, I go up there and I just happened to land when the separatist movement was just starting. So speaking English was pretty much out of the question. And so I had to learn my little broken French there. It took me about 3 months. And I used to watch Sesame Street every morning. so I could learn the body parts and how to say hello, how to say goodbye, hair, and all that kind of thing. So it was that was pretty exciting. It was a learning experience that way. But I was able to overcome the language barrier with some help from the team, obviously, but they in the beginning they were teaching me all the bad words, so I go to the restaurant and order something that I shouldn't order, okay, and kind of offending some of the waitresses, so it's like okay, and then I'd have to break into English and apologize real quick, and that was at the end of it, right? So they had me say something to a girl the one time, one waitress, I don't know, you know what putain is, right?
Yes.
That's okay, but Putain and Putain are 2 different things. One's the fry, one's the prostitute. Okay, so I ordered the prostitute. Okay, so she's kind of standing there looking at me like I lost my mind, and so I switched over to English and go, well, the guys told me that this was supposed to be the word to say for the fries with the cheese. You know the ones like that. And she's like, so she's kind of eyeballing me kind of hard, and she went and got the thing and came back. So what I did was to apologize to her. Once I could speak French a little better than what I could that day, I went back and asked her if she wanted to go for dinner. I wanted to buy her dinner for the mishap of that day. And guess what? She said yes. So it was a good time, and I had to go back and brag to the guys about it. So there you go.
Now, in Quebec, can you get a prostitute slathered in gravy?
I don't know. I've never really pursued that. So yeah, you probably could. You can get about just about anything you want these days.
Okay.
But winning the championship up there was incredible. Like we had a really good following. We were juniors, and I played against Rick Vibe up there. Rick played for Sherbrooke. I played for Quebec City. So I don't know if you remember Mario Marois. He was also on our team. John Savard. Okay, so we had out of that team of 20, about 16 of us got drafted. And on Sherbrooke, man, their whole team got drafted pretty much. And the same with New West, because we ended up meeting them in the playoffs in the round robin that was held in Montreal that year. But I can remember we finally got through the first and second round, and we were playing Sherbrooke, and it was Sherbrooke, I think, had home ice that year. So we did 2 games there, and when we did the 2 games at the Quebec Coliseum, it was sold out. It was the first time I'd ever walked out on the ice in front of 15,000 people. It was incredible. It was I can't even, I'm getting goosebumps now. I can't even, it was just one of those experiences that you'll never forget. And that was the first time I'd ever been in front of that many people performing. And we are entertainers when you get right down to it.
Speaking of entertaining, you move on to Erie, the Blades, and you score the game-winning goal against the Hampton Aces in Game 7 in 1979 in the finals of the Northeast Hockey League playoffs. Tell me about your time in Erie.
Oh man, my time in Erie, it was great. Like, our coach was Nick Polano, who later went on to become the assistant coach of Scotty Bowman in Buffalo. And those 3 years were my learning years, so that I could get my game up to the point where I could actually try out for an American League team or a National League team. Because as we said earlier, I only started skating at 13, so my skating skills were okay, but they weren't great. So that gave me 3 years of work, and Nick worked real hard with me to get me prepared for this. You know, he saw the potential in me the first year. You know, of course, I was a tough guy and all that, and had many fights, but he also let me play. I also scored goals, so it was one of those things that I said, man, this is all right. And the first year, like you said, Game 7. Winning goal, which was great. You know, I can't describe it. And then we went on to win 2 more championships in that league with the same team, back to back to back. So from there, I ended up getting my first contract with the Sabres, and thanks to Nick Polano, it was his doing that was able to get me in. And I ended up going there. I didn't make the big club squad. I ended up in Rochester. And that was a really, and in Rochester, our coach was Mike Keenan. So I've been lucky enough to be coached by Scotty Bowman, Mike Keenan, Nick Polano, John Brophy. There's Claire Alexander to me, who was a really good coach, and just decided he didn't want to do it anymore. But these are guys that have accolades probably as long as their arms, and to be able to say that they had coached me is a real honor.
Well, Polano didn't just coach you. This is what he said about you. Val was one of my favorite players of all time, a terrific gentleman and a great guy. He did so much for the organization and the community, things like going to schools and hospitals, anything we asked of him. So I wanted to ask you about your work in the community, the things you did in Erie off the ice.
Well, we used to do a lot of things. There were a lot of autograph signing sessions, or there were things where people were having picnics and they needed us there, and we'd go and I'd serve hot dogs or hamburgers, and maybe head over to the beer tent and start serving beer there. So it was more fun than an actual function. So I was very appreciative because of the fact that I got to meet more people, and they were very happy because they got to meet a Blade. I don't know if it was just me, but I know that there were a lot of people around all the time, and I enjoyed that kind of thing. It was like I still enjoy it, to get in there with a few people and just chew the fat for a while, tell a few stories, maybe get a few laughs. I know that a lot of people, they always want to hear dirty stories, but you can't really tell those all the time. You got to have something else. And we had quite a run. The fans in Erie and the fans and all the fans and in all the places that I've ever played have been just fantastic. I can't say that I've had any trouble with any home fans. Most of my trouble came on the road, and boy, did it come sometimes. It was like if you guys saw Soul on Ice, I guess you saw the kind of thing that I went through when we were down in Winston-Salem. Now that was quite a night. And at that point in time, CBS Sunday Morning had been following me around for 2 days at that point, so they caught it all on film. But and that's where you saw the kid with the watermelon, and his gesture. I guess he thought it was a great idea. It wasn't bad, and he was very talented. Can't take anything away from him, because the watermelon that he was showing, he had spent hours carving that into a riverboat, a paddle riverboat, the ones that go up and down the Mississippi. That's what that was. And you know what? I don't know why he picked a watermelon, but I probably to razz me a little bit too. But he was quite an artist. I said to him when he showed it to him, I go, you know what? You got talent like that. Why are you wasting it on that? You do something with it. If you're going to do this, you might as well try and sell it at weddings or something like that. So I don't know if he ever did.
What did he say?
He just said, well, I'm all right. Didn't think so. And he did apologize up and down when he came down to the glass with it. And he goes, I don't mean anything disrespectful, but he goes, this is what I work with. He goes, and I decided I wanted to put this together for you and show it to you. So the kid he didn't have a bad bone in his body when it came to racism, from what I saw or heard and what I could see just from the body language, right? Because usually at that point in time, what I've been doing this for couple of years. Went through junior, so you pretty much, after a while, you can tell when someone's a racist. They don't have to say a word. They can be as sweet as pie, but you can still tell. It's in your eyes.
Ignorance is not a defense for racism. You are more forgiving than I think I would have been in the same situation.
I gotta be honest. In writing the book, it was a very therapeutic aid for me, because after being talked to like that and being called those things all those years, it just sticks in the back of your mind, and every now and then you can still hear it. I know people think that's kind of nutty, but you can. And I could still hear it, and it took me probably a good 20 years to get over it. And the thing that brought me out of it was writing the book, putting it down on paper, thinking about everything and analyzing what people had done and how they had changed over the years that I played. Like, I had 3 years in that league, so each year got progressively better, but it was still there. So, and
yeah, because I read that you, for a long time, you didn't have a cell phone or a computer.
No,
you just wanted to get away.
That's right. I didn't watch hockey. I listened to it and kept track of the standings and that, but as for watching games and that, I couldn't do it. And it took me a while, like I said, to get over it. And once I did get over it, I watch hockey now. Okay, so I'm back into it. So it's all right.
But you were surprised, I'm hearing, that the things that you were rightly just like, I don't want to think about it, I want to put it out of my mind. But confronting it sounds like actually helped you quite a bit more than trying to avoid it.
Exactly. If I'd known that 20 years ago, that's what I would have done. I would have wrote the book then, and I would have been over it, and I'd probably be in a different place right now. But as it stands, things are set to me destiny. So my destiny was to write it later, and then to try and help the human race any way that I can to get over these things. And of course, I have to try and make sure that the Black race is being represented properly. And anyone who's representing a race should be thinking about the same thing. Now, you want to go out there and want to make sure that everyone knows that you are the cream of the crop, and that there are good people in your race as well as bad people, as it is in every race. So we just got to make sure that as athletes that we perform properly, and that we put on a good show, and that we are actually respectful for the public. Because you have so many young kids watching that want to emulate a lot of players, and you don't want to have them thinking, you know, that you beat women or that you're drunk or anything like that. So you have to be very careful what you do. And once you decide that you're going to play a professional sport, you're on stage every moment of your life. So you have to make sure that you represent properly. Not only you're representing your race, you're representing yourself, you're representing the organization that you're playing for. So there's a few things that you are representing that you have to try and stay on top of.
So you wouldn't agree with Charles Barkley that athletes aren't role models?
No, I wouldn't, because the reason that athletes are role models is because people are always watching you. They want to be you if you're that great. Like, how many people would like to be LeBron James? How many people would like to be Wayne Gretzky? How many people would like to be Mario Lemieux? How many people would like to be Cam Neely or even Connor McDavid? You know, the list goes on. There's so many guys out there that were so good that there's too many to really name right off the top of my head. But we are being watched by the public. Okay. Now you have to realize that. And it's just like being an actor, you know, they're on stage 24/7, you know, even when they go on vacation, they're still on stage, so that you can't do anything that's out of context. Otherwise you blow an image. And if you blow an image, the first thing they do is, oh man, that guy's this, that, who's he working for? Well, how come they hired him? That's what it usually comes down to. So you have to be very careful, especially when you're playing at the top level of any sport, because you're going to be on the spotlight the whole time. You know, it doesn't matter what you do. You could fall off the sidewalk and someone's got something to say about it, right? Or just walking along and say your girl goes down, or there could be someone that says, oh, he pushed her. You know, there's a lot of people that see things differently, or they perceive things differently than the way they actually happen.
Want to take you back to leaving Erie, as you said, going to Rochester. Again, goal-scoring Val James scores the goal that clinches the Calder Cup for the Americans in 1983. The soft hands of Val James.
Yeah, they were soft.
Tell me about that.
Oh, man. You know what? That I had just gotten back from being called up, and I just played the series against Boston for Buffalo. And I got back, and we were in game 6. I think I only played 2 games in that series, or 3. But the thing was that I had been up with in the Apple, and those guys are a lot faster. And I was being taught, do things, count. By the time you get to 3, you should already have made a play. That's the way it goes. Okay, so I was in that frame of mind. So as soon as I got the puck from Sean, I just kind of just shot it, and I caught the bottom corner and caught the goal. I just handcuffed the goalie. He didn't expect me to shoot it that fast, and it went in, and I was psyched. Okay, it was like, and then I never thought about that, but that was probably my 3rd game-winning goal in the playoffs. I think I got one in Quebec too, if I'm not mistaken. So I was pretty pumped. I wasn't Wayne Gretzky, but I was a Val James. Okay, okay, so. It was all right. It was really, really another special moment. Like you said, I played on most of the teams that I played on have gone on to win championships. Of course, I played on a couple of teams that just crapped the bed, but you know, you get seasons like that. But I got to say, 90% of the teams that I played on, we went somewhere. We either made it to the finals or we won the whole shebang, which is fine by me.
So you're obviously much more than a feared enforcer. But in Rochester, I do understand that you would have a way to intimidate visitors even before they got on the ice.
You must be talking about those boxing robes. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Jimmy Pizzatelli, he got us those. We had to win 3 fights in order to get a robe. So so I won my 3 fights. Lou Crawford was the other guy. Clint Fair was the 3rd guy, and Wachowski. What the hell was his first name? Oh, I can't remember his first name, but he was the 4th guy. And what we would do is we'd go in, we'd do some push-ups, maybe pump a couple of weights so you pump up a little bit. Then we'd go out and put the robes on and stand there right on the bench, arms crossed, you know, looking all tough, right? So So guys would be looking out, would come out, and they'd look over across the ice at us and kind of go, man, are all these guys insane or something? And then they'd be looking over their shoulders all night. So it was kind of crazy. I had the same thing happen when we had Brove coaching me and with the Saints. He'd have me take my shirt off and stand on the bench and stand there just looking buffed, right? So it was like, wow. So it was one of those things. It's an intimidating factor thing. You know how that is. And it worked.
Yeah. Half the battle's won before you even step on the ice, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And what the thing is too, yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, the thing is too that a lot of the coaches understood that. And the thing was, you get everybody thinking, is this guy going to go crazy tonight? And the thing was, I wasn't the type of enforcer that would go out there and try and hurt people. Now, we've probably gone over this, or you've gone over it with a few people too. There's goon, there's enforcer. Okay, the goon is the guy that goes out and tries to kill people or maim them any way that he can. The enforcer is the guy that keeps the goon in check, and he goes out and he sets the pace for the game too. But he doesn't go out and intentionally try to maim somebody.
You got a compliment from a referee too about your fighting skills, right?
Which one?
I think it was John Koharski.
I was just gonna say, you're not talking about Coho, are you? Yeah. It was Mr. Koharski. He was quite a gentleman himself on the ice. I can remember the night that I fought Dave Brown. We were I didn't know Dave from Adam, and all of a sudden he's on the sideboards. I don't know if you watched his warm-up routine. But he'd get on the sideboards, he'd stretch a little bit, do some push-ups, and then he'd just stare down the tough guy on the other team. That's how he did. He'd stare you down the whole warm-up. So that happened, and we finally got on the ice together. And first thing co-host says to us, you guys better just act right. Don't be acting up. He goes, I'll throw the whole book at you. He goes, you're going to walk out here with a game misconduct, a match, and any other kind of penalty I can throw in there. So we get out there, and I kind of faked like I was going to drop the gloves. So Dave dropped his and ended up getting a 10-minute misconduct. So and so he wasn't very happy about that. So we come out the next period, and we happen to line up again. So now Coho knows something's going to happen, right? So Dave says to me, he goes, I can understand if you're afraid of me. He goes, a lot of guys are. And I kind of went, well, no, Dave, I'm not afraid of you. So we got to give the people what they want. So I said, so when the puck drops, and Coho's got his back to, he's about to drop the puck, and he's hearing all of this. I said, so when the puck drops, here's what we'll do. We'll kind of skate over to the sideboards. We'll throw our gloves off the end of the corner so nobody steps on anything, and then we'll go for it. So I go, no sucker punch. I go, if the guy goes down, he goes, no sucker punch, and we'll let him get up. If he wants to fight some more, we'll keep fighting. That was the rules that we set before we even started fighting. So Coho was yelling at us. That's when he yelled all that stuff about the penalties and that. So we said, okay, well, whatever. And I just said, well, Coho, I got to defend my honor. He just told me I was a chicken. So he goes, if you guys start fighting, that's going to be it. So puck dropped. We fought. We went to the box. Dave gave me the thumbs up because he thought it was a great fight. So did I. And Coho skated by and went, man, that was a good fight. If you guys didn't have such a good fight, you'd both be out. So he was, and the thing was, I know that in fighting and hockey, there's a lot of times where you lose your head and you don't stop fighting. But I had hurt kids, or when I was playing juniors, I didn't really know my strength. So I'd had a fight and I had broken one guy's jaw, had broken another guy's arm. And at that point, once that all happened, I decided I can't fight PO'd anymore. I have to fight under control and with my mind totally intact. So from that point on, I have a fight, but I'd be very controlled about it, unless I was awfully mad at somebody. But then, my survivor skills would kick in, and I wouldn't hurt anybody. I had a fight with one of the guys on the Maine Mariners, and the game, we played them back to back, one home and one at their rink. So fight started the first time, and I just got on the ice. My first time on, it was the third period. I was kind of stiff and a little pissed off that I hadn't been on the ice anymore. So went out, tried to play a little bit, and all of a sudden I go down and get the puck, and I see these two gloves go by me. But when I turned around, the guy was already swinging, so he broke my nose, and we went into locker room. I had to get it set in their locker room, and there was a few racial slurs thrown out in that room. But I couldn't really cause a fight in there. Probably could have taken most of the room out by myself, but that would have been stupid. Okay, that would have caused a whole lot of stuff, and I probably would have gotten suspended too. So the second fight starts, and the guy's being really cocky. I'm thinking, okay, so you want to fight because you kind of suckered me. Well, we'll see how it turns out this time. So the fight starts, and I'm throwing him pretty good. Like he hit me a couple of times, but not really good. So I'm fighting him, and I hit him probably 3-4 good ones right around the face somewhere. I couldn't really stop and see. So so it got to the point where I said, well, I'm kind of tired of this now, and I cocked it and I punched him right in the middle of his forehead as hard as I could punch. And I saw his eyes cross, and he just went glassy. And I was holding him. I could shake him. He wasn't even resisting or anything. So at that point, I just let him go, because if I'd hit him again, I probably would have seriously injured him. And I realized that, and just said, well, you know what, this fight's over. And I would never want to end somebody's career being stupid. Now, for me to hit a guy who's defenseless at that point in time would have been a stupid thing for me to do. It probably would have got all kinds of cheers and that from the organization and that, but it just wasn't the right thing to do.
I'd love to talk to you for about another 3 hours, but I've already held you longer than we promised. So I just want to finish with a couple of things. You mentioned the Sabres honored you. In Rochester, they had a Val James Legends Night for you. Were you surprised that at long last, after so many years, that you were finally getting the recognition that you deserved?
Actually, I was very surprised. I was happy to get the recognition. I never really looked at it as it was long overdue or anything like that. But like you said, I finally got recognized. I was really happy. I was surprised. Okay, I'm not going to say I wasn't. I was surprised because I had went down there to be with some of the guys that had been playing before that. And if I'm not mistaken, that this was the honor. That was another time. I also went down one time for the Mike Keenan night, right? So that was a good night too. But this night, it was Legends Night, and they happened to say that I was a legend, so I got to go too, so it was all right. So then the very next night was my birthday. So this was like February 13th, and the 14th was my birthday. So then my birthday night, they honored just me for being me, I guess. And I also was signing books for people that were there. And I can remember that was another one of those magical nights, because the lineup at that time, and we did it. I started at 5, and I think it was 5 or 5:30. The first signing was we started somewhere around 5:30, and it went right up to just before game time. So what I said to him was, that line was still pretty long. I'd say there's probably at least another hour and a half worth of signing to do. That's how many people that didn't get autographs. So I told him, look, announce on the PA system that I will come out and finish signing those autographs after the game. So I went back after the game. The game ended around 10:30. I don't think I didn't get done until like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Ooh.
The sweepers were sweeping when we were getting done, pretty much, right?
They're like, we want to go home.
Yeah, well, that was pretty much it. They were just about done what they had to do. So it was one of those times that, and the way I look at it is, there were so many people that came out with books that wanted them signed that I couldn't just let people go without. Yeah. I stayed there and I signed it until the very last guy got his signature, and we ran out of books too. So it was a magical night all around.
Now there's somebody kibitzing off camera. Can you bring her on as we say goodbye?
Oh yeah, come on over, right? Oh, she's trying to back out on us, really.
Oh no!
Here she is.
Say hi. Yeah. Look, that's cool. That's this is my favorite part of the whole interview.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? We've been through a lot together, and there's been things that she's heard. Like I think the worst incident that we had together was we were in Baltimore, and we had friends had come down from Canada to see us, and we went to lunch. We went to supper, and we had some guy in the corner that was heckling us, right? Like really bad heckling. So, and you can't, it was one of those things. But what was it, 35 years now?
It was in the 80s.
No, how long have we been married? 35 years.
Coming up on 34.
We're coming up on 34 years of marriage, so it's we've been together for quite some time. Through the good, through the bad, the whole 9 yards. Like I actually met my wife towards the end of my career, so she got to experience a little bit of it. But that's why she didn't know too much about all that racial stuff, because we got together towards the end of my career, and like I said earlier, I didn't feel that I should burden her with that. But it turns out it wouldn't have been a burden, and I should have burdened her, right? She was on me about that for a year that I didn't tell her, right? I was like, well, I'm sorry, but I just didn't want to taint your memory of anything.
Well, as Val James once said, who wants a fruit salad with just oranges in it? What good is that?
That's right. That's right. And my wife bugs me about that all the time. She goes, you and that fruit salad. It's go, well, hey, that's the only way I can actually make it work, right? Because, and like I said before, we're the same as a human race. We got so many varieties of color and that of course, if we put it all together and manage it properly, it's going to work, just like a fruit salad. Okay. Fruit salad's no good without bananas, is it? Really, it's no good without oranges. No. So there you go. And that's the only thing that I could actually think of that everyone could relate to and actually understand it. Then when it comes to racism, it's all about understanding. It's like you don't say this or you don't do that, and it comes down to actually understanding the culture. Because once you understand the culture, then the rest is a piece of cake. And as a human race, we should be trying to understand each culture. The black, the white, the Asian, the Middle Eastern cultures. There's certain things that they do in the Middle East that we won't do here, and there's a lot of things that we do here that are taboo in the Middle East. So once you understand the culture and how it operates, well, then now you can navigate through their world without offending anybody.
Well, Val, thank you so much for increasing our understanding. We managed to have what I hope is a valuable conversation about race, and in the same conversation have a lot of fun too. So thank you for all of it. I very much appreciate your time.
Well, thank you for having me on, and I really love giving it, and any time that I can help people understand. And like I said before, you've got to understand every race. You can't just try with one race, and if they can understand how the black race operates, well, you're closer to it. And what happens is you got to look at it like this. Now, a lot of black families are from down south, so there's a lot of southern drawled or southern intertwined into the culture. So if you can understand how things work in the south and then how they've evolved to the north and how to treat people of all races, well, you're going to win. It's a win-win situation. You can't lose. And it's like I say, everyone, about take that formula and superimpose it on life, and you'll be successful. So that's go ahead. That's pretty much what you have to do. It's an understanding thing and a respect thing. And once you get that all together, it works because nobody comes out knowing this stuff. It's a learned behavior.
Very good. Thanks, Val.
Thank you. And God bless and be safe. Remember, we're still in that lockdown, so we have to be safe. It's still around us, and it looks like it's going to be with us for a little while longer. So we all got to pull together, do what we're supposed to do, and we can get this country open again. So all you people that aren't wearing masks, get them on, get your shots, and then we can get back to normal and start making some real money.
The sage wisdom of Val James. Would you join me, Laura, if you are able and willing, and we'll get your mic on here? Because you were the one who brought Val James to the program, so thank you for doing that.
I love him. His wife and I are buddies, and we always talk back and forth. And so it was. I'm sorry I had to kick out at the last minute or a couple minutes of the recording earlier today, and I didn't get to see Ina. But yeah, the two of them are just so adorable and amazing people together. I don't know Kwame as much as I know them, but he's just a beautiful human being. So this was a really great night. You did an awesome job, Glenn. Like, kudos to you. It was done really well.
Thank you. As we emailed back and forth to each other recently, just keep all the people who say get that bozo off my program. You filter those out, and I'll continue feeling good about myself.
No, people, if you think that Glenn is awesome, then please send us emails and we will forward them on to Glenn, because he doesn't believe me when I say that he's amazing. So,
well, thank you. You are as well, and it was really a pleasure. And it's nice to do something that really matters. And I felt like tonight mattered.
Definitely did.
So, closing words from Laura.
Closing words. On behalf of Paul and I and Glenn, we thank you for tuning in. If you liked our show, can you please click the like button down below? And if you haven't yet subscribed, please hit the subscribe button and the little bell so that it notifies you when we go live. If you are interested in our Zoom after this program and you don't have a link, please email us at hockeytimemachine@gmail.com and we will send a link to you and you can come join us for some hockey talk.
Well done. Thank you, Laura. And good night for Hockey Time Machine.
Go Leafs, go.